Baby shark.
Ah! In case you're wondering.
Hey, I'm Chris.
And I'm Amber, and welcome to In Case You're Wondering.
Yeah,
Hey.
welcome. Amber and I are excited about our episode tonight. I know we're missing Vicky. We're going to have her on here in just a little bit. But tonight, we're going to talk about an anime that we both really, really enjoy, and that's Deathnote. If you've never seen Deathnote, or if you haven't read the manga that it's based off of, listen, I'll tell you, as somebody who's relatively new to the whole genre of anime, I really fell in love with it. And so, but Amber, I know that you've been a fan of Deathnote for a while.
Yeah, I probably started around 2014, 15,
Okay.
even though I'm a little late to the game at that point. But for someone that is like barely in the early teen, young, still kid, and it's like, hey, why not watch this? And then I got hooked right away.
So what was it that hooked you?
Well, it was because a lot of the series that I started watching were more of like the stereotypical animes that they would recommend, like
Okay.
July and April. I know, it's sad. Everybody in the comments, I know, but it's just I got recommended those. I watched like Fairy Tail, and like I think one of the first ones as well was like Squid Girl as well. But I got into Deathnote because it was so different compared to a lot of them that I was watching at the time. So I was hooked very quickly because it wasn't like the stereotypical, I am a huntress, you know, like the normal.
I love the voice that you used for that. That was amazing. Right.
Yeah. But it's just when Dad told me that he wanted to start on Deathnote, I'm like looking at him, I'm like, so what episode are you on? You know? And I'm trying not to.
Yeah. I had definitely, just gotten started with it. But I thought you had read the manga and that you had watched it a couple times, I think. I looked back, though. This Deathnote came out in 2006.
And
so
the manga came out even earlier.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I'm really behind as far as with Deathnote. However, I feel like I'm slowly, between Demon Slayer that we've watched and then Blue-Eyed Samurai.
Blue-Eyed Samurai is very mature, so everybody that is interested in that series, I would wait.
But it's good.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen Blue-Eyed Samurai, I would definitely recommend it. But I fell in love with Deathnote. I think for me it's all about two things. It's the artistry that's involved with it, but it's also the story.
Yeah.
And this, I think that what's really great about Deathnote in particular is the psychological side of it. So much of it happens in the characters' heads. I was looking here, it shows that IMDb has it scored as an 8.9 out of 10. I personally find that to be a little bit low.
That's a little low, but IMDb always rates them
They
very
do.
low.
Even other great shows that we've reviewed before.
If you see the Crunchyroll one, it's like 9.3.
Yeah, Crunchyroll is 4.8 out of 5.
It's very high because it's like if you are into anime and you never seen Deathnote, there's something wrong.
Right.
Because it's that starting anime that you always get recommended because it's that good. Doesn't matter what year you watch it, you could always go back to it. The storyline's good. The voice acting for both the Japanese and the English dub is great.
Well, and that's something I'm really glad that you brought up, because in some animes
it sucks.
It does. That if you watch it in English, you're clearly getting a different experience than somebody who's watching it in the original Japanese. But it's very clear that the people that made Deathnote were really being intentional about making sure that the voice acting, with maybe some slight exceptions, in general did a really great job, right, of just making it, I think, believable.
Yeah.
And so I really love it. I think the basic concept of Deathnote is that the main character, like Yagami, finds basically like a diary, right? Like a notebook that says Deathnote on it. And what he realizes pretty quickly, amazingly fast actually, is that whatever names that he writes in the Deathnote, that person dies. And so immediately from the very start, Light Yagami begins essentially by targeting criminals, people that deserve to die. And he thinks that if he simply starts eliminating, killing off criminals by writing their names in the Death Note, that essentially he's going to help make the world a better place. And the story kind of begins, he almost seems almost like a hero, that he's taking out bad people that would hurt innocent people and that haven't received justice. That's how it begins.
Mm-hmm.
What was your opinion of Light Yagami at the beginning?
Well, at the beginning, you kind of think of normal Japanese teenager. You know, he's very into his studies. He's involved into like his dad's work stuff, working on investigation stuff. So it's just that it's a funny coincidence that like he got in the Death Note and then he was like going behind the department's back to get information. But also it's like, I was actually talking about Dad like last week about it, that everyone that uses the Death Note gets a kind of like an addiction to it. Like, you would think after one time realizing what it could do, you're probably being like, I don't want to do this, you know, but always every time, like, you would think, oh, I'm not going to do this again, but like your brain keeps on.
Yeah, I've always believed in the idea that absolute power corrupts absolutely, that and we certainly see that with the character of Light Yagami. Now, I have to believe that he's not named Light on accident. I think they're playing with this whole idea of light and dark, that a character who seemed like a rather intelligent, wholesome, bright young man gets pulled over to the dark side, that he becomes corrupted by the power that he holds. Enough that he starts calling himself the god of this world, right? He really gets full of himself. It doesn't help the fact that he's also a genius. There is, on the other side of things, another character who goes by the name L.
Yeah.
As we find out, Light figures out the rules that it takes in order to go and kill somebody. You have to know the person's name, and you have to know their face. And L both disguised his face and did not give his real name. As a result, he was kind of immune he becomes sort of like a major antagonist to Light in this whole entire story. Anyway, I find it brilliant. I really enjoyed the writing. The characters are complex and deep and interesting, and we see this decline of someone like Light Yagami. I think we could probably call Light Yagami a tragic hero, right?
Yeah.
That I think at the beginning we're kind of rooting for him, right? And the further that he goes and the darker that he becomes, the more we realize that he's really the true villain in this story.
Yeah.
And that's really the sad part of it. But definitely enjoy the story and how dark it gets. There are other characters that I think kind of stand out. Are there any standouts for you besides Light and L?
I would probably say Nier and Mello. Those are top ones. Naomi Takada.
Okay.
She was like the newscaster for the third Kira in Nier during the end of the series. Well, Misa Amane as well.
Okay.
The annoying character.
I'm glad that you brought up Misa Amane. She sort of plays the stereotypical character. I've seen her type of character in a lot of other animated shows before. Kind of reminded me of some of the characters that you would see in Dragon Ball, right?
Yeah, they're like overzealous or not overzealous.
A bit one-dimensional.
Yeah, it's like only one thing that they're focused on.
Yeah. Definitely really enjoyed the series in general. And I think what I really loved about it is that as a story, it has a very clear beginning, a really clear middle, and a really great payoff at the end. I think that really was the powerful part. There's a part in the story where you kind of feel like Light is going to get away with it. That he's fooled everybody into believing that he's not the villain, right?
Yeah.
He's fooled everyone. He thinks he's very clever. And at the end, the truth comes out, right?
Yeah, we're not going to say what exactly the truth is.
Right.
But it's because we don't want to say much more because we still want people to be like, hey, I want to watch a series, I want to see what they're talking about. And like there's really cool, like after every kira, every first, second kira, in every section, they have their place, you know, and the story always kind of bends towards them, so everything resolves about them. So it's not just a stereotypical target normally of like light Yagami and like the police department, but you get different points of views at the same time.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, I think that while it's a Japanese anime, I do think the story is really classic.
Yeah.
Right? Of a character who kind of takes on a power and ability, and that power goes to his head and it corrupts him. And I think it's a really interesting story, but told in a unique way, right?
Yeah.
And so, not unlike the idea of, I kind of compared it to Macbeth, right? Where like the witches plant the idea that Macbeth is going to be somebody, and that ultimately leads him down the dark path. It's the same kind of idea with the character of Light. Amber, if you had to give people a reason to watch Deathnote or to read the manga, why don't you give us 30 seconds? Why, in your opinion, is it worth the watch or the read?
Wow, 30 seconds is not that much.
Yeah.
But
Go fast.
if you're gonna read it through the manga, it's really cool because you're able to see it in book form, and you get to see, oh, what is the similarities of the manga and the anime, and also just how like the animators and the voice actors work together to make a very good story quite believable. You know, it kind of like pulls you in, kind of makes you feel a part of the story. If you have any questions about this, I'll write comments down below for your comment if you have any. Like, do you recommend this for my 9-year-old kid? I'm like, probably not, but just the series in general is very good. If you like stories that have multiple kind of outcomes, then it's definitely a good one for you. Yeah, I think that we pretty much talked about everything, because Deathnote, it kind of depends on your input at the beginning and output at the end. Always the first watch is what you normally would think for the series, so that's a good thing to put your mind
If you
to.
had to choose between watching the anime or reading the manga, which one do you prefer?
That's hard. They're quite even. Like for me, I like watching the anime, but then they're both even playing field. You could go either way.
Which is actually pretty remarkable when you think about it. How often do you read a book and love it, and then you see an adaptation of it, and the adaptation falls so far short of what the literature is?
Yeah.
And yet for you, you're saying that whether it's the manga or whether it's the anime,
It's very accurate.
they're very accurate.
The
which is
only
really cool.
thing I have to tell everyone, do not watch the Netflix rendition of it, of Light Turner and the awful... it's bad. Because in the live action, there's only like one character for the Netflix version that I'm like, okay, I don't mind them, and it's the person that plays Ryuk.
So hey, if you enjoyed Death Note, let us know in the comments. Again, as somebody relatively new to anime but really enjoying kind of the experience and getting immersed in the whole thing, I love it. I love the fact that it's animation, but it still has a great story, really great artistry and characters, that it's dynamic and it's interesting and creative, and that it's deep. There's a lot of depth and thought into it. If that's up your alley, then you definitely need to check out Death Note. I definitely give it, I don't know, my ranking, I'd probably put it at 9.5 out of 10.
That's a good rating.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Me, it's still pretty high up there, because when it's your first few ones, you're always going to put those on the top because it's what drawed you into anime.
Right.
Even after 10 plus-ish years of me like watching the series, I still give it the high ranking.
I think that really is a reflection of how good it is. If you can watch something over and over and over again, and you come back to it even years later, and it still has an impact on you, it means it's good. So, hey, guys, thanks as always. I'm Chris.
And I'm Amber.
Thank you for the 117 subscribers.
Whoop, whoop, whoop,
That's
whoop,
pretty
whoop.
awesome. We really appreciate the love. All right. Adios.
Bye.
In case you